Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulullah. We continue reading from Imam Al-Ghazali's Jawahir al-Quran wa Durr, the jewels of the Quran and its pearls. We began already reading from Surah Al-Ma'idah. Imam Ghazali selected 12 verses. We have read verses 2 and 3, contextualize them, beginning with the name of the surah, the surah of the table. This reminds us of the story of the Last Supper, except that here it is the revelation. There in Christianity, it is first it shows up in the letter of Paul to the Corinthians. If we have differences in the details, then the Quran is muhaymin, has the upper hand, because it's revelation, because it is preserved. And the two verses that we, in addition to the first one, which spoke about covenants, contracts, obligations, fulfilling them, they did teach us how, what is halal and what is haram in terms of food, and also that which is in terms of behavior, um, dedicating anything to other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or drawing the lot, almost like gambling. Still, even that would be prohibited. Between 3 and 9, we still have between 3, in fact, and 8 and 9 that we will read today. We have other verses, including what nullifies purification. And I can simplify this by saying, when one uses the toilet, that does nullify the ablution, the purification. And it does say, lamastum nisa. Muslim scholars differed about the meaning. The Ahnaf, they found verses of poetry that indicate in this context that al-lams here is a metaphor for intimate relationship, and it's not simply touching. For the Shafi'i school, it is directly touching between spouses or people who could potentially be spouses. According to the Islamic worldview, of course. For the Maliki school of jurisprudence, it is not any touching with intent, practically like foreplay, that would nullify the ablution. At any rate, verses 8 and 9, it does talk about a promise of reward. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promises reward for those who are believers. They believe, they do good. وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. He promises them His forgiveness and a great reward. Now, verse 8. أعوذ بالله السميع من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا كونوا قوامين لله شهداء بالقسط ولا يجرمنكم شنآن قوم على ألا تعدلوا اعدلوا هو أقرب للتقوى واتقوا الله إن الله خبير بما تعملون. O believers, stand firm for Allah and bear true testimony. Do not let the hatred of a people lead you to injustice. Be just. That is closer. That is closer to righteousness. And be mindful of Allah. Surely Allah is all aware of what you do. Justice. Truth. Justice. Including sincerity. قوامين لله, sincerity. It cannot be for reputation. It cannot be for egoistic reasons. It is not for show off. It is not to gather as many likes as possible. Talking about social media today. It is not. The likes also could be translated. The more people watch, the more money they make. لله كونوا قوامين لله. But even when we talk about يا أيها الذين آمنوا, it might sound like something that we are familiar and we should be familiar with. The Qur'an is full with يا أيها الذين آمنوا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تحلوا شعائر الله. يا أيها الذين آمنوا كونوا قوامين لله شهداء بالقسط. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وابتغوا إليه الوسيلة. So it's there. But do notice that this is different from يا أيها الناس. يا أيها الناس, it is general. It is to all people. So for example, at the very beginning of Surah An-Nisa, it does address all people. We have created you, all people. We have created you from male and female, which is true, whether you are a believer or not. We're a believer not in that only. You could still believe in the creation of humanity from a male and female, single pair, if you will, but not accept the rest of Islam. Once you become a believer and you fall under this address, يا أيها الذين آمنوا, rest assured now that there are obligations. It's a package. يا أيها الناس, people are not obliged. They're not obliged by what we are obliged as Muslims. So you cannot ask the people at large to fast Ramadan. You cannot ask people who are not Muslim to pray the 5 daily prayers. Obviously. So يا أيها الذين آمنوا, now you, if you believe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then be ready for the obligations, because there are obligations. Remember that the action of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is absolutely just. It is impossible for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to do anything that is unjust, because to be unjust is to do something to others in what belongs to them. It could be their body doing something unacceptable, prohibited, without their approval, to their property, to their house, to their car, to their body, as we said. It could be imprisoning them, it could be confiscating their property, it could be anything that you do It belongs to them and you touched it. It belongs to them. They own it. And this ownership is valid when you talk about human being to human being relationship. But in reality, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will never come across any property that does not belong to him, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is why it's impossible for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to do anything that is unjust. It's impossible. So for us, it's an invitation, qua believers, يا أيها الذين آمنوا, to stand firm, to bear true testimony for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This witness with, there is a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It is narrated by both Al-Bukhari and Muslim. And Nu'man bin Bashir said, my father gave me a gift. My mother, her name is Amr bint Rawaha, she said, I will not accept, لا أرضى. I will not accept, meaning this gift to, and the context will explain why. The text will explain why. I will not accept until you, addressing her husband, until you ask the Prophet ﷺ to be witness to what you have done. So he went to the Prophet ﷺ to be a witness to this act of charity too, that he gave his son Nu'man. The Prophet ﷺ asked him, did you give all your children the same? أكل ولدك نحلت مثله? He said, no. The Prophet ﷺ said, اتقوا الله واعدلوا في أولادكم. Fear God, be conscientious of God, commit yourself to refrain from that which is prohibited. That's taqwa. اتقوا الله وعدلوا في أولادكم. Be just in your dealing with your children. And he said, إني لا أشهد على جور. I will not be a witness to injustice. So, كونوا قوامين لله شهداء بالقسط. Stand firm for Allah and bear true testimony. True, it's basically about justice. بالقسط. القسطاس. المستقيم. So the Prophet ﷺ refrained from being a witness to something that he considered unjust, and he taught us a great thing. Let's unpack أكل ولدك. الولد, a child, is both male and female. This is not a personal opinion, of course. There are prominent scholars today who said on TV, on the Iqra channel, about something similar, that during your life, this is not inheritance, During your life, if you give one child something, you give the others, male and female. This is not inheritance. So, for example, if you have a building with it's your own building with as many apartments as the number of your children, both male and female. If you would like to give one child an apartment, you should give the rest of them, male and female. This is not inheritance. Okay. So this is so that's basically standing firm for Allah and bearing true testimony. Another uh, a modern story. The former dean of the College of Dawah of the Qur'an, College of Sharia, if you will, at Al-Quds University, one of the former deans, Dr. Ismail Nawahda, who's also a Friday Imam at Al-Aqsa Mosque. Once he was invited to deliver the Friday sermon, Khutbah al-Jum'ah, at the Mosque of the Muqata. This is the residence of the Palestinian leader at the time, Yasser Arafat, rahimahullah, and he was present, Yasser Arafat himself. So at the time, the Palestinians allowed a gambling casino to be built in Jericho. And Ismail Nawada, Jazakallah khairan, said that this is not okay, this is haram, it should not be the case. Remember, this is the Holy Land. This is الأرض المقدسة. ويا قوم دخول الأرض المقدسة التي كتب الله لكم. We are the true followers of Prophet Moses, peace upon him. ونجيناه ولوطا. This is about Prophet Ibrahim عليه السلام and سيدنا لوط عليه السلام. ونجيناه ولوطا إلى الأرض التي باركنا فيها العالمين. And we have saved him and Lot to the land that we have blessed for the nations. There is Las Vegas for those who would like to gamble. Not that it is okay, but out of all places, when we talk about the haram, when we talk about a holy place, when we talk about a sacred place, we don't talk about that which people consider sacred. We talk about revelation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala declare these places as holy places and do not mix the geopolitics of today and the borders that we have today with the borders of blessedness. Al-Ard al-Muqaddasa goes in part of, we talk about Jordan all the way to Tabuk, some scholars would say. So it's part of the Sham, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alam. And blessedness, holiness does not stop at a checkpoint, at barbed wires, and no, it doesn't. And this is why one needs to highlight justice, because there is a trend around the world today to ignore justice, to bypass justice. There is a big discrepancy between the North and the South, and we should bear witness to this. North and South, we don't talk only about Muslims. A fraction of the human family lives in the north, about 20% they enjoy about 80% of the resources. 80% live in the south and they subsist on 20% of the resources. This is unfair. A rich continent like Africa has been left in ruins, and they continue to devastate this rich continent but impoverished policies. يا أيها الذين آمنوا كونوا قوامين لله شهداء بالقسط. And do not let the hatred of a people lead you to injustice. Those who have mistreated you, those who hate you, those Islamophobes, those you still need to be just. So in Islamic theology, yes, we bear witness to the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We subscribe to loving our neighbors in the sense of serving them, being just in our relationship with them. That is closer to righteousness. Justice is closer to righteousness. And be mindful of Allah. Surely Allah is all aware of what you do. One can see how world leaders highlight security. They don't want to hear anything about justice, and sometimes they speak about relative justice. They don't want to give people what belongs to people. Say, for example, you talk about refugees. Any refugee around the world has the right to go back to his or her home, no matter what. You cannot take it. You cannot confiscate it. You cannot basically bring people from around the world or give simply to other people to live in people's property. They have the right to go back to their homes, literally to their homes. This right cannot become obsolete. It's universal. So for those who believe, those who do good, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised them His forgiveness and great reward. And this forgiveness and great reward, we talk about the hereafter. Inshallah, they will be destined to paradise. Though verse number 10 is not included in the Imam Al-Ghazali selection, it makes sense because we spoke about the promise to those who believe and do good. Those who disbelieve and lie, وَالَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا وَكَذَّبُوا بِآيَاتِنَا أُولَٰئِكَ أَصْحَابُ الْجَحِيمِ. As for those who disbelieve and deny our signs, they are the residents of the hellfire. What's next is a reminder that people should remember the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all the good things that happen to them. Even when there are calamities, even when there are tribulations, you have ni'mah. And sometimes it's unique. It is very special. Such as, yes, it's an occupation. Yes, it's a colonial project. Yes, all the ugly things that you see, but against this ugliness, still being able to pray, for example, at Al-Aqsa Mosque is a great blessing. But the ni'mah in the next verse, in verse 11, is about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preventing those who would like to harm you, to harm the believers, then, inshallah, and now. He held their hands back from you. And may I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hold their hands back from us. بما شئت وكيفما شئت. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. Until the next session, inshallah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.